World, welcome to the Shannon Joy Show. Hello, world, and welcome to the Shannon Joy Show. We're broadcasting live from the Joy Virtual Studio right here in the beautiful Finger Lakes region of New York State. It is so great to be with all of you today. It is Thursday, April 17th, and we have a lot of headlines to hit today on the Shannon Joy Show. You can check out those headlines in the show notes in the description of the show. Just scroll down. Also, today we are featuring one of my favorites, Sheriff Richard Mack. The constitutional sheriff is going to be with us in the Joy Virtual Studio in just about 30 minutes. I have a lot of questions for him, very interesting. I know he has a different perspective on politics, especially regarding the Trump administration. And so I have a lot of questions about his perspective on some of the more, in my opinion, unconstitutional things that are happening within this administration in 2025. So we're going to have a lively conversation today as we go through the news of the day. And there is a lot to get to today. Some of the headlines that we are going to hit, really disturbing, really disturbing. This is from the Gateway Pundit, written by Jim Hoft. A couple days ago, the Trump administration is fast-tracking controversial self-amplifying mRNA vaccines for the H5N1 bird flu. This is now COVID, the COVID shot, Operation Warp Speed on steroids. And this could potentially have major impact. John Catanzaro of Beyond Bio is writing this, which we're going to look into: the reckless gamble of self-amplifying RNA, a runaway experiment with no off switch. We covered this a few months ago over the summer when it was happening in Japan. They were able, I believe, to stop that from being rolled out in Japan, but they are now pushing the pedal to the metal again. The Trump administration learning zero lessons from the disaster that was the COVID lockdown and Operation Warp Speed. And this is precisely because conservative media and the medical freedom movement will not hold him accountable. I have been warning about this for 12 months. I was warning about this during the primaries in 2024. So this is a big deal. We're going to look at that in a minute. Also, you guys see the headline today. Great piece from our friend David Leach, the strident conservative. Trump using the military to secure the border is a precursor to martial law. And this is the discussion that I would like to have with Sheriff Richard Mack about the constitutionality of what this administration is doing, from the executive orders to DOGE to the crackdown on immigration that is looking more like martial law than it is a reasonable and rational policy-based initiative from this administration. And we have to be very careful not to grab the red meat, right? When they try to justify unconstitutional actions, fascistic actions, to take care of things like illegal immigration or securing the vote. We talked about Real ID yesterday. And again, they're pitching Real ID as a way to secure the vote when the Real ID is accessible to non-citizens. So yes, a great piece from David Leach that we're going to look at today. And it's going to inform our conversation with Sheriff Richard Mack today. So we have a lot to get to. Another really great piece from Conservative Treehouse. This is really interesting. Gateway Pundit, Conservative Treehouse. These were sources that I was using 10, 12 years ago. Good sources. I stopped using both of them for a while just because they became so Trumpy, but they are beginning to speak out against some of the more concerning areas of this administration, particularly DOGE. Elon Musk writes Sundance at Conservative Treehouse, which is linked in the show notes of the Shannon Joy Show. Elon Musk is doing what Eric Holder dreamed of doing with DOGE, and this is frankly terrifying. So we're going to try to get to the Gateway Pundit and Conservative Treehouse today in the first half hour of the show with all of you. Again, as I mentioned, it's a lot. Let's say hello to the live chat. We have Buskman on the live chat right here on Rumble. CJP Rumble with us today. Mav 2022 has joined us on the live chat. Be My Valentine. Rothan Walker, great to see all of you. If you have comments or questions for the good sheriff, make sure you put them in all caps on the live chat here on the Shannon Joy Show. We're broadcasting live, of course, on Rumble, on Twitter, Spreely TV, Roku TV, Apple TV. To our Substack audience, it is great to see you. We are live on Substack, which is so cool. Of course, you can get the Shannon Joy Show at your leisure on any of your favorite podcast platforms. Our partners over at Radcast pushing those out. And of course, our friends over at Patriot TV carrying the Shannon Joy Show every day, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and X America News. Of course, we want to thank Annie, our amazing producer, for making everything happen today on the Shannon Joy Show. Annie, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. Nothing could possibly go wrong with anything.
Well,
We're
right.
in
That's right.
great hands.
I know. Well, seriously, you're the master, the wizard. She is the woman behind the woman every day here on the Shannon Joy Show. And I have a funny story for you before we get started. As you
Wait,
know,
before you tell the story though, I was actually referring to the country being in great hands.
oh, well, wait till you wait. Yeah, I know. And listen, I'm a little nervous about I love Sheriff Mack, right? But he does love Trump. And he's a big Trump supporter. And so we were working to get him on the show, and I was talking to his scheduler, and I said, is he sure he wants to come on? Like, because I am very solidly in the Trump administration critic category right now. There is not a lot that this administration is doing that passes constitutional muster with me, or even common sense muster. And she's like, no, he's good. He's perfectly fine with talking about that. So we might have a bit of a discourse today, maybe a little bit of a debate today with the good sheriff. And I think that that's really healthy. So no, I am not confident that this country is in good hands right now with this administration and the tech bros. But I guess we get what we vote for. And as Catherine Austin Fitts pointed out brilliantly in our conversation just a couple days ago, we, the people of the United States of America, have a lot to do with the leaders that we elect time and time again and what we let them get away with. So we're all kind of in this together, if you know what I mean, right, Annie? So yeah, I don't know. Yesterday, it's interesting. Last night I had this is my funny story. I think I might have black pilled the ladies Bible study that I went to for the first time with my girlfriend. So we are, and I get called a black pillar all the time, right? Because from my perspective, I'm just I'm looking at the headlines. I'm reading the agendas. I'm looking at the executive orders. I'm looking at what DOGE is actually doing. I'm looking at the actual budget and the deficit spending. I'm looking at the impact of tariffs and all of the news that is coming my way, and simply telling my audience the truth. But I constantly get called a black pillar, and I think yesterday by accident, I went to my first ladies Bible study with my girlfriend, and these ladies are lovely. I know them. These are girls that protested lockdowns and forced vaccination back in the day, and so they're curious. Like, we go in and we chat a little bit before we start the Bible study, and so they're just asking me about what I think about things and what do you think about this, and so I just tell them the truth, and I swear, like, I start talking and I just see their eyes get bigger and bigger and bigger. And they're just like, I called my girlfriend this morning. I'm like, did I mortify the ladies at Bible study last night? I'm like, I feel bad. But, you know, the truth will set us free, right? And I'm going to continue to tell you guys the truth the way I see it. I know it's controversial, especially in conservative and Republican leaning circles. But I think it's important. And so I think the discourse today with Sheriff Mack is going to be very interesting. Well, that's what I said, Zen woman, because they're asking me these questions. I'm kind of like, well, you know what? They listen to Steve Bannon. A lot of them listen to Steve Bannon. And I mean, God loves Steve Bannon. You're going to get something from him, but it's definitely not going to be the full truth. There is going to be truth there, but certainly not the full truth. And he really does have rose colored glasses on in terms of Donald Trump and his administration. Yeah, black pilled the Bible, ladies. I think they're going to invite me back. I'll come back next week and I'll just kind of, I don't know, like wind it down a little bit. True story. This is actually a true story. I've always been this way. And it's not on purpose. And Annie, you'll appreciate this one because I think you've always been the way that you are. You are feisty and you stand up to injustice and you're a truth teller. And, there's this like legend about when I was a kid. I went to a really small school, a tiny school. I graduated with 32 kids and we went K through 12 together. So basically the same 32 kids. They were like brothers and sisters by the time we graduated. So there is a story out there, and I don't remember this at all, but it's kind of like a legend. I have a couple girlfriends who swear by it. They say that it happened. And in fact, I think one of them wrote about it in my yearbook when we graduated. But the story is that in kindergarten, I blackpilled my entire kindergarten class about Santa Claus and told all of them that Santa Claus wasn't real. And so a lot of them went home to their parents. I guess my parents, what they say is their parents called my parents and they were really upset because I basically ruined the whole Santa Claus story for my entire class. And I'm like, yeah, you guys know he's not real. Like none of this is real. And it was traumatic for them back in the day. Now, I don't remember doing this, but this is just to let you all know that this is just the way that I am. I really think this stuff. I really believe it. I do not mind being challenged. I understand that other people don't share my so you're like I knew you would appreciate that, Annie.
I do, and it's so funny you say that. Two things. One, I was having, as you know, I don't have kids. Well, I haven't
Right,
been
right.
blessed yet, but I was like, I don't even understand why people would do the Santa Claus thing with their kids. First of all, you're raising your kid to be spoiled right off the bat, thinking, oh, you're just gonna have this guy hand over a bunch of gifts because you were a good kid, or not,
That's right.
because
Right.
regardless, they get the gifts. Secondly, somebody somewhere is gonna spoil it for them, and then you turn out to be the liar in the family because you lied to your kid, and apparently you were that somebody that.
Yeah, marched right into kindergarten, told the whole class there's no such thing as Santa. My girlfriends swear by this, and they yelled at me for years. They're like, "It was the biggest trauma of our lives," and no, but same, Annie. I never told my kids about Santa Claus either, and it was mainly that I just never wanted to lie to them. I
Mhm.
never wanted to have to deal with that moment where they look at me with their big brown eyes, tear filled, and say, "Mom, you lied to me my entire life. Santa Claus isn't real." And I just was like, you know what? I want my kids to trust me. And so I mean, we had fun with Santa Claus and we'd be like, oh, Santa Claus is coming tomorrow. Wink, wink, nod, nod. And the kids would be like, oh, yeah, Santa Claus. But it's super funny. I had to tell every one of my kids, I'm like, listen, we don't do the Santa thing here, but do not tell your friends. I'm like, you cannot go into school and tell your friends that there's no such thing as Santa Claus because like you'll never live it down. So my kids would always chuckle when their friends would talk about Santa Claus, but
Well, my
we
thing
never
is,
really did.
Shannon, in America, a lot of holidays, including Christmas, have lost its meaning. The reason for the
Yeah,
season isn't there anymore because as a child, you're not being taught the season for the reason, a reason for the season because you want your kids to have fun.
right.
You look at 4th of July, you look at Christmas, you look at any of these holidays, it has all turned into, for adults, it's, the food and the drinks and the go home exhausted and wake up hungover. And for
Right.
kids, it's all about comparison of how many candies did you get on Halloween and how many gifts you got on Christmas. Personally, if I ever have kids, no, they're not. First of all, I'm not going to spoil them with a bunch of gifts because they need to learn the value of gifts.
Yes.
And if you're overloading them with those gifts, then you're not teaching them any values. Now, aside parenting, you said something, said it's not on purpose. I
Yeah.
agree, but I think it is your purpose to be like that.
Mm. Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much. But it really is. I tend to like kick hornets nests and it's really this is how I truly see the world. And so that is something that you can all know is it's organic. If I'm going to say it, I actually think it. There isn't any parsing, there aren't external agendas, there aren't external political agendas or organizations behind me directing me. Of course, I'm influenced by colleagues and what I see on the news, like everyone is, but we do the best here that we possibly can to bring you guys the truth outside of the two-party political spectrum. And as you can tell, yeah, the truth has always been pretty important to me. I love it. Guitar Lily, Santa Claus, the original psyop. Absolutely. Yep. We don't do Easter bunnies either, as we're moving into Resurrection Sunday next week. Yeah, in our family, we stick to the reason for the season. So I thought that was a funny story. I got the same feeling yesterday with the Bible study ladies as I did from my friends back in the day. It's like I'm bursting their bubble, right? Like they just want to go watch Steve Bannon and be like, yeah, we're winning everything and we're being ushered into the golden age and we're all going to be rich and prosperous and Trump's going to save us. And like, oh my gosh, I love that bedtime story. I wish that bedtime story were true. I wish that it was exactly as they're portraying it to the right, but I cannot betray my own eyes. And this story is the one I want to lead with here on the Shannon Joy Show. But first, before we get to the fast tracking of the controversial self amplifying mRNA vaccine, this is the COVID shot 2.0 on steroids. Okay, COVID shot 2.0 on steroids. But before we get to that story, I want to thank our sponsors. You guys are going to hear from, of course, Colonial Metals Group, an unbelievable sponsor of the Shannon Joy Show. And by the way, gold is doing gangbusters. We're going to talk about gold and silver tomorrow. Really great piece by Jesse Colombo. He is the author of The Bubble and a fantastic analyst, really looking at silver as an option for people who don't have a ton of money to play around with, who really just want to protect themselves as we move into precarious financial times. Great report on silver and where he thinks that silver can go. It's more affordable for people to begin to acquire it, and you can do that with our friends over at Colonial Metals Group. In addition to helping this audience out with the physical purchase of gold and silver, they also have options for backing up your Roth IRA or a 401k with gold and silver, with physical gold and silver. So they can teach you all about that. Go to colonialmetalsgroup.com/joy today. That is colonialmetalsgroup.com/joy. You're also going to hear from our friends over at Chef's Foundry. Native Path Hydrate, amazing hydration. It's my morning routine. We're going to talk about that a little bit later in the show as well. And of course, the amazing line of Faraday products from our friends over at the Satellite Phone Store, sat123.com/joy. That's sat123.com/joy. So, reminder to the audience, this is how we support the show. It is through our sponsors. We disclose who our sponsors are and the advertisers, and then it's up to you, the viewer or the listener, to patronize them. If you're in the market for any of their products and services, please remember that these are the companies that keep this show on the air. And so if you want to help grow the show and protect this platform, a great way to do it is to support our advertisers. So when we go to commercial break, and I try not to overload with commercials, I try to pick really great partnerships with really great people and amazing companies. I'm discerning in that way. And so every time we do go to commercial break, I would appreciate it if you guys would consider patronizing these amazing sponsors. So let's get to this piece. We need to lead off with it because I don't want to save it to the end. This is a big deal. This is from Jim Hoft, the Gateway Pundit. The Trump administration has granted fast track designation to a groundbreaking and very controversial self amplifying mRNA, that's mRNA, vaccine candidate targeting H5N1 avian influenza virus. As I mentioned, COVID shot Operation Warp Speed 2.0 on steroids. The vaccine is ARCT 2304. It's developed by Arcturus Therapeutics and is now in phase 1 trials. It has been positioned by federal health authorities as the frontline defense against a potential bird flu pandemic. So they are repeating the same narrative, the same copy points, the same agenda that Trump 1.0 with Fauci and Birx at the helm championed in the devastating lockdowns of 2020. This is now with a so-called friendly administration in power and also RFK Jr. at the helm. Okay, this designation was announced on April 10. It was awarded by the US Food and Drug Administration, that is the FDA, that is Martin Makary, a darling of the MAHA movement, but also a huge proponent of the COVID shots and injecting pregnant women with COVID shots, which is something that I told this audience 6-8 months ago when he was being tapped for that position. It was also in partnership with the Department of Health and Human Services. That is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. authorizing this in conjunction with the FDA and also BARDA, which is the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority. That is DOD, that is the military. And this was announced on April 10th, as reported by the Gateway pundit, Jim Hoft. This is absolutely outrageous. They have learned nothing, absolutely nothing from the lockdowns of 220 and the rollout of the kill shot, which we know now is devastating so many lives, and there's so much data there. This is what John Catanzaro from Beyond Bio had to say about the self-amplifying mRNA. It's worse than the COVID shot. He writes this, which he pushed out on Twitter yesterday: in the ever-growing arms race of genetic engineering, a new and deeply concerning player has emerged, self-amplifying RNA, that's the saRNA. Unlike conventional mRNA shots like the COVID shot, which at least carry the pretense of controlled dosing, the saRNA introduces a self-replicating genetic mechanism into human cells, a mechanism that has no inherent safeguards, no patient-specific oversight, and no clear understanding of the long-term ramifications. It also has no off button. This is not just another chapter, he writes, in the reckless rush towards biotech dominance. It is a blatant, high-stakes experiment on the human genome, on the American population, once again, masquerading as innovation. As we have already observed in mRNA, with the mRNA COVID vaccines, the risks are far from hypothetical. And I will link this as well into the show notes, but he goes through some of the potential risks. First and foremost, loss of dose control. He then talks about cellular hijacking without an off switch, okay? Unchecked inflammation and autoimmunity. He says continuous foreign protein production means constant aberrant signaling and immune system activation. There's potential for genetic disruption. There is potential for shedding. There is the utter lack of patient-specific surveillance. And he says this as a bottom line: self-amplifying RNA is not a medical breakthrough. It is an uncontrolled genetic intrusion. It represents the next phase in a reckless biotech experiment that prioritizes market expansion over patient safety. Until we see rigorous, long-term, patient-specific safety studies, not just industry-funded propaganda, which is all out the window now. Now that it has been fast-tracked in an Operation Warp Speed type scenario, we will get none of that. We've learned nothing. This technology must be viewed for what it is: a high-risk, open-ended biological intervention with no clear exit strategy. And that is going to be introduced into the human population once again by this administration, by the President of the United States, Donald Trump, and his appointments in HHS. Outrageous. Outrageous. The piece by Gateway Pundit is linked in the show notes of the Shannon Joy Show if you would like to refer it and pass it around. Send it to state representatives, because we need to, I mean, we're going to have to deal with this now. It's like a fire hose, I say, to the face every single day. And sorry, that's just the truth. All right, so let's go to break. I think we have the amazing Sheriff Richard Mack in the Joy Virtual Studio, ready to go. America's constitutional sheriff. I have so many questions for Sheriff Mack. Very important discussions about executive orders and DOGE and the actions of not only this administration, but the Biden administration and the Trump administration before that, and the Obama administration, the expansion of executive authority, the expansive use of emergency powers that we're seeing, currently the United States of America still under that declaration, that health emergency declaration of 2020, which has been extended, as Sasha Latapova has reported on her Substack, until 2027 by not only the Biden administration, but the Trump administration as well. This is how they get immunity. This is how they can put these shots on the market, coerce you to take them, and shoot up 2 million babies since Donald Trump has been inaugurated. 2 million babies and children have had the mRNA shots as recommended by RFK Jr. and the CDC. It's unbelievable. We're going to talk about those issues and the proper role of our federal government and the presidency, among other issues as well, with Sheriff Richard Mack. So I'm really looking forward to bringing him into the Joy Virtual Studio for the remainder of the show. Make sure to get your questions and comments ready. Put them in all caps. If you have any questions for the sheriff, we will try to get to them at the end of the show if we have time. All right, so let's go to break. Annie, thank you for producing the show today. We're going to go to a quick break. When we come back, without further ado, Sheriff Richard Mack. Hey, everyone. Okay, true story. As many of you already know, my father-in-law, Rich, has recently been suffering from EMF exposure and just debilitating tinnitus. It's so bad that he and my mom have temporarily moved to the country to get away from all the towers and get him treated. Luckily, he's working with a holistic healer and things are getting better. But I have to tell you, on some of the worst days, the only relief that he felt was with the Faraday technology from our friends and sponsors over at the Satellite Phone Store. The beanies, blankets, and bags create a barrier which shields your body from EMF exposure and gave Rich so much needed relief. Something magical happens when you drop your device into a Satellite Phone Store Faraday bag, backpack, or pouch. It protects your device from EMP attacks and surveillance, but also protects you from your device. Go to www.sat123.com/joy today to browse the entire line of Escape Zone Faraday products. And make sure you always use the promo code JOY for 10% off your entire order over at the Satellite Phone Store. It's time to start thinking about EMF exposure and protecting yourself and your family with the Faraday line of products from the Satellite Phone Store. I know it really helped Rich, and it can help you too. So go to www.sat123.com/joy today. Shannon Joy here with an urgent retirement warning. Trade tensions, tariffs, and China's relentless attack on the US dollar have rattled the markets. This is why Warren Buffett just dumped $133 billion in stocks. And so has Jeff Bezos, Larry Page, and even Jamie Dimon, CEO of the world's largest bank. Just recently, Rich Dad Poor Dad author Robert Kiyosaki warned of a coming market crash. This is why thousands of informed IRA and 401k savers are now shielding their savings with gold. And the experts at Colonial Metals Group are the only folks I trust to help you do the exact same. Visit www.colonialmetalsgroup.com/joy or call 888-705-0950. You'll get a free gold guide on how to bulletproof your wealth with gold tax-free. Plus, see if you qualify for a free home safe and as much as $7,500 in free silver. Once again, that's www.colonialmetalsgroup.com/joy or call 888-705-0950 to protect your wealth today. So, in the dark days of COVID-19 lockdowns in 2020 and 2021, there was one pharmacy that was helping Americans get the medications they needed. Medications like ivermectin. And that pharmacy was All Family Pharmacy. They're not typical. Most pharmacies will make you jump through hoops to get the meds you need, but they won't. They'll let you order in bulk so you can stock up for up to a year. No waiting, no red tape, whether it's ivermectin, antibiotics, or emergency kits, they have you covered. Because when it comes to protecting your health, you should be in control. It's so easy at All Family Pharmacy. You order online, the prescription is handled for you, and the meds are shipped right to your door. Stock up now before you need it. Go to allfamilypharmacy.com/joy. And if you use the JOY10 promo code, you'll get a full 10% off your entire order all the time. That's allfamilypharmacy.com/joy, JOY10 for 10% off so that you can stock up and gain that peace of mind. Welcome back, everyone, to the Shannon Joy Show. By the way, fenbendazole is back in stock over at All Family Pharmacy. It was so wildly popular that they sold out of it for a time, but I just got an update that it is back in stock. Ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, any of the medications that you need at your fingertips through the great work of our friends over at All Family Pharmacy. Family-owned company, brick and mortar, right in the great state of Florida, and they're helping Americans all over the country get the medications they need in a very simple way. It's fast, it's easy, and they'll never give you any headaches because of politics. It's amazing that medications have become political in some ways in the year 2025. That will never happen with our friends over at All Family Pharmacy. Make sure you use that JOY10 promo code, JOY10, every single time you order, especially if you're stocking up. If you're going to stock up, I think it's almost a year. I think you can stock up on certain medications up to a year if they have the appropriate shelf life. And so if you are stocking up, you have to use that JOY10 promo code because you'll get 10% off the entire order. And that could be very meaningful. So allfamilypharmacy.com/joy. That's allfamilypharmacy.com/joy. And Annie, if you could pop their URL right in the live chat, that would be so amazing. Without further ado, let us welcome once again into the Joy Virtual Studio one of my favorites in the whole world, Sheriff Richard Mack. Mack, how are you doing, my friend? He's America's constitutional sheriff, the organization at cspoa.org. Sheriff Mack, how are you doing today? It's great to see you.
Well, I keep getting old, and I can't believe that some of you young people haven't solved that problem, that crisis yet. So I'm going to hang on as long as I can so somebody can reverse the aging process. I want to go back to playing basketball and baseball and running around with my grandkids instead of them outrunning me every time we're playing tag.
That's right.
So,
That's right. Well,
yeah.
the good news about getting older is that you get to celebrate something that many people don't get to celebrate, and that is your 50th anniversary with your beautiful wife. Congratulations. That's coming up very soon, isn't it?
May 20th will be 50 years for Don and Sheriff Mack.
Oh, it's
Actually,
amazing.
do I dare tell you my name?
Yeah, go for it.
It's Richie. Spelled with
Forevermore,
a
you're going to be
Y.
Richie. Yeah,
Richy. But as far
Richie.
as my nom de guerre and for this show, it's Sheriff Mack. But
Okay,
yes.
okay. So Miss Dawn is the only one allowed to call the great Sheriff Mack Richie, except for me. Some
There's
maybe.
still people who knew me in high school and college that called me that. My cousins
Oh,
all do.
yeah.
And yeah, so, but uh, it's always been my name. And I just have I never came to a point where I'm not Richie anymore. I'm Richard. So call me Richard.
Right.
No, I don't even like the name Richard.
Oh my gosh. Well, congratulations. It's a great name. And you continue to do really great work as America's constitutional sheriff. And I'm really glad that you came on today because I'm quite concerned about this administration. Equally concerned as I was about the Biden administration. As an independent, I try to look at both administrations, both Democrats and Republicans, with clear eyes, not through a political lens or a team lens, but according to the discernible policy outcome. And so I tend to look at the bills, I look at the executive orders, I look at the actions of DOGE. And I've been quite alarmed, as this audience knows, over the past 2 months with this administration and a couple different issues. But I want to start to just with your perspective, your overview. I mean, you are a constitutional sheriff. You have studied the Constitution. You understand the role of the federal government versus the role of state governments and local governments. And I'm just curious as to where you are in terms of an overview of the actions of this administration thus far, coming from someone who was a supporter of the Trump administration and the election.
Well, I've always been very concerned about the ubiquitous corruption of all governments, especially Washington, D.C.
Right.
Its only real competitor would be the mafia.
Mm-hmm.
And the deep state, the secret societies, all of that, who really run our lives and really run the government and really pull all the strings in Washington, D.C. I don't trust hardly any of them, but one of the reasons why I like Trump is that he was not a politician; he was a businessman, and I really love DOGE. I love DOGE because it's focusing on the corruption of government. Yes, I have some questions. My biggest concern is why taxpayers are still being forced to fund Planned Parenthood. I'm not talking about the efficacy of choosing abortion or choosing life. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the corrupt funneling of taxpayer dollars to a private organization that provides no government service whatsoever. And we're paying $700 million a year.
Mm.
So 1.5 billion, 1.4 billion every 2 years to a private organization that then takes that money and funnels it back to politicians who funneled it to them in the first place.
Right.
This is the epitome and zenith of corruption. And I am so fed up with corruption, I cannot even see straight. They talk about getting rid of the IRS, which should have been done years ago, and the federal income tax. Finally going after the Department of Education, which has no constitutional authority to exist in the first place. Ronald Reagan promised to get rid of the Department of Education, never did. And now we're finally at least addressing it again. I don't see, one thing that bothered me that you said was I don't see very much comparison or likeness or similarity between Biden and Trump at all. But the corruption behind the Biden administration, hiding his illness and somebody else calling the shots, probably the most corrupt thing that's happened to America in a long time. His wife, probably the biggest liar in the country, and she pulled a lot of the strings, and she went to a lot of his meetings. It wasn't even they didn't even try to hide it. But the first one that really bothered me is when he was doing one of his first public readings of the teleprompter, and then some of the reporters tried to ask him questions, and they pulled the plug. The screen on the TV went blank, and so whoever was doing all of that and trying to prop him up as a little puppet, and then they even tried to say, "Oh yeah, he's fine and he's going to run again." All of these lies were so blatant. Usually they try to hide it, but they didn't. I totally support DOGE, but I have another question there. First, they were going to audit the gold in Fort Knox. What happened to that? And I think that we all need to know and understand, and you mentioned it a minute ago, everyone on this conversation and every American must know, first, what form of government we have, and two, what is the proper role of all government? What is government? What did the founding fathers establish government to do? Then after that, we have a playing field that we can always go back to a couple of principles of government and then go from there.
Right. Let's home in on DOGE. Let's start there with
Okay.
your support of DOGE. I come at it from a very different perspective, and I have two sources here that I linked in the show notes of the Shannon Joy Show. The first, a piece that was researched and written by Naomi Wolf of Daily Clout, and it's entitled "The Sack of Rome: Elon Musk's Digital Coup d'Etat." She details how Elon Musk and his engineers have captured very private, protected American data and are now more powerful than any president. And she's expanded on that research paper. It's been used by Catherine Austin Fitts of the Solari Report extensively. There is another piece from the conservative treehouse. Elon Musk is doing what Eric Holder dreamed of doing. And this is the beginning of that piece that I want to read to you and see what your thoughts are, because many are saying that this has been the value and the amount of power that can be gleaned from control of trillions upon trillions of dollars of U.S. citizen information. The IRS, the Department of the Treasury, is incredibly disturbing. But this is what he wrote. First of all, this is Sundance at Conservative Treehouse. This was written by Mario Nothel, who is a propagandist on Twitter for Elon Musk. He wrote, Elon's DOGE just teamed up with Palantir, private multi-trillion-dollar corporation run by Peter Thiel, the AI data company co-founded by Peter Thiel, to help the IRS build a massive mega API. What is a mega API? Think of it like a giant turbocharged plug that lets computers talk to each other. This one would let the IRS finally access all of its scattered ancient tax data in one place, and that data is linked to personally identifiable human beings in the United States of America. For 3 days straight, Palantir's tech geniuses, DOGE officials, and IRS engineers have been locked in a digital war room trying to modernize a system that still faxes things like it's 1977. It's like giving a flip phone the powers of Chat GPT, right? So this is now saying the bigger picture. They're essentially our personal data protected by the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution of the United States of America,
Right.
privacy. Has, and this is documented through firsthand witness accounts in mainstream media, but also by Naomi Wolf in her report as well. That information has been stolen. It has, Elon Musk went in, took the information, has uploaded it to cloud servers, and now owns it, and is now partnering with unelected corporations, right? So representation, right? These are the people now who are going to be in charge of our taxes and how people pay their taxes and all of those types of things, very private information. Do you see that the handing over of that power and that information, that data, to unelected, unaccountable officials like Elon Musk, who there is no way for us to check him? How do we check this individual?
Well,
Do you have any concerns with that?
yes, but that has been happening for decades, and it wasn't Elon Musk. And Elon Musk did not form the IRS, nor did he form the uh, Federal Reserve back in 1913 and create a federal income tax. All are illegal and criminal. And so, if we're really going to get somewhere, then I don't care
Well,
who.
so if
Well, wait a
DOGE,
minute, wait a minute. I don't
okay,
care who the president picks to come volunteer to help him clean up uh, corruption or Washington, D.C. They have exposed something about corrupt government that has never been exposed before. And that is all the corrupt spending, all the corrupt taxation or tax dollars going to farce uh, corrupt causes like the
mm.
one I just mentioned of Planned Parenthood. But and this Planned Parenthood isn't getting enough attention at all.
Well, but
But
why would
all
you?
of this,
Okay, Donald Trump
but all of
removed
this
the pro-life.
boils down to one thing: they should never have had an IRS, and it should be abolished. They should never have had a Federal Reserve, and it should be abolished. And the corruption between the IRS and Social Security has been going on for a long time. Social Security can get any information from the IRS, and the IRS any information from Social Security, and they do. And my wife and I have been screwed by Social Security over and over.
Yeah,
Our congressman, who's supposed to be a real solid constitutional guy, he's on Freedom Caucus, will do nothing about it. And we've been trying for 7 or 8 years to get all that taken care of.
right.
Look, They're all
But
corrupt.
I will
and-
challenge you in the reporting by Naomi Wolf, and this is detailed reporting on her piece. This
Mhm.
is not information that was ever shared in intra-agency ever. This is now all being put together. It's very new, and they're going to use AI in order to facilitate that. In addition, right to your point about Planned Parenthood, it was Donald Trump prior to the election that stripped all the pro-life language from the Republican Party platform. And there was great consternation and concern from people like Lila Rose, who's one of the foremost leaders in the pro-life movement, who called him out for that. She was canceled. She was absolutely blasted by so-called conservatives protecting Donald Trump for speaking up about the fact that he was stripping that language. So do you hold Donald Trump accountable for Planned Parenthood not being defunded? If Elon Musk is in charge of DOGE and he is supposedly the guy who is stripping all of
Well,
this
he
funding,
can't do it by himself.
well,
He's got to have
you're saying
action with Congress.
no, he is doing it unilaterally. I
But
mean that every headline that has dominated conservative media over the past 2 months has celebrated Elon Musk
he
cutting
can't
things.
defund Planned Parenthood by himself.
Well, then what's the point of DOGE then? Because what you're
Well,
talking about is
Doge is
the
exposing.
headlines. Well, no,
Doge is
no.
exposing. The Elon Musk cannot make policy, and he can't stop federal agencies.
Yes, he is
He can
making
work for
policy.
Trump and work with Trump and let Trump look. This is what I found, and this is what needs to be addressed. That's all. That's all Elon Musk can do.
That's not what he
However,
did. That's
but
not what he did. He went into the
you have to
Department of
know the
Treasury.
president it does not hold the purse strings, and he can't cancel what has already been there. Would I love to see him try? Yes, especially with that, especially with Planned Parenthood. But let's get back to this:
So
the
whose fault?
proper role of government.
Whose fault is
No,
it that
wait,
Planned
wait.
Parenthood is so
The
funded?
president cannot make law, and he is to enforce the law. He is the top law enforcement officer of the country. He cannot make
Can he
law
use the
by
bully pulpit?
executive order.
Can he
He
use the bully
cannot.
pulpit? Can he use the
And
bully pulpit?
however,
His
he
Twitter
we
handle.
need to understand the difference there. He is the chief CEO. He is the CEO. He's the chief executive officer of the federal government. He can issue executive orders to federal employees, but he cannot to the American people. And that's the big difference. And that's where most of us in the country are wrong, and most politicians are wrong, and most presidents are wrong. They cannot make law from the Oval Office. And the Supreme Court, case law. There's no such thing as case law. The Supreme Court cannot make law either. There's only one entity that can make law, and that's the legislative branch. Period.
And the president used the bully pulpit to encourage. I mean, he is
Of
the
course.
leader of
Of
the. So
course.
why hasn't he spoken out about Planned Parenthood?
Um, uh, that he's too busy with a few other things, and I think national security is one of those. I'm not saying, I believe the number one concern should be in America abortion. I think it's the worst and most immoral and horrible thing happening in our country, that we do that and that we kill babies just because we feel like it. And it's
I
an
think if that's the
embarrassment or
number
whatever.
one, if that is the number one position that you hold, I think that, I mean, from my perspective, that's one of the reasons I fully oppose President Trump, because his rhetoric and the 4 years of his first presidency, one of his campaign promises was to defund Planned Parenthood. He never defunded Planned Parenthood in the first 4 years of his presidency. He actually increased funding to Planned Parenthood in each subsequent budget.
Well, he came
Then
out
in
at
his
first. He
second
came
round,
out very strongly
not
against abortion and even said that it was
well,
murder.
but I separate rhetoric from discernible policy
Well,
outcomes.
of
So I
course.
judge a president not by what they say, but by what they accomplish in their presidency. And that was the reason I didn't support him in the second run for presidency.
But defunding Planned Parenthood is being talked about in this administration.
But he took it a step further when he stripped the language from the Republican platform regarding Planned Parenthood. Now, even
Yeah,
if
I've
he
never
were
seen
to,
that. I don't doubt you. Well, I kind of doubt you
no,
on
I'm
that
right.
because I've
I'm
never
right.
heard that before. But
Yes.
the churches that really push that still support him, I can't see that they would do that because they're very anti-abortion.
I would like to
But
further challenge because we know that birth rates are down. Fertility is has been devastatingly impacted by the Operation Warp Speed and the COVID vaccine, which was fast tracked by this president. As I mentioned in the first segment, 2 million babies and children have been injected with mRNA experimental technology in the first 2 months of the presidency of the United States of America. We know from VAERS sources, VSafe data, and now a growing number of peer-reviewed studies from across the globe that these vaccines are highly damaging to fertility. There are reports from Pfizer itself that we know that was filed by Naomi Wolf in a co-partnership with Steve Bannon to look at those Pfizer papers from the original uh, trials in 2021. And so even if there was a headline that Trump had defunded Planned Parenthood, right?
Mhm.
The actions of this presidency, not only are we not doing anything to address the mRNA technology that is still on the market, not being studied,
Yeah.
but as I mentioned in the beginning of the show, the Trump administration has now doubled and tripled down on it on a worse version.
Okay, I got to ask a question then.
Sure.
However, were any of those 2 million babies forced to take those vaccinations by
Yes,
government
a baby cannot provide
agencies?
informed consent. A baby cannot give
How could
consent.
that even be? Because how many millions of us refused to take the COVID-19 vaccination? We didn't
Yeah.
take it. Nobody forced me to take the vaccination. Nobody forced any of my grandchildren to take it. Parents of, my some of my children had some of my children had my grandchildren vaxxed, which I totally opposed. But I don't believe that government just went in and forced all this happening. These are parents who have been fooled. These are Americans who don't know better, who have been inculcated and brainwashed into believing that government's here to take care of you, and they take the vax because they're stupid.
No, they're not
And
stupid.
yeah,
And I can say in
most
2021,
people who got the vaccination were stupid, and millions took the
they were
vaccination.
misinformed, they were lied to, they were
Well,
propagandized,
of
and they were
course, but
coerced.
but
So if Trump locks you down and says you can't come out of your lockdown until you take my vaccine, and then
that did
Biden
not
picks up,
happen.
well, that's how it started. And then Biden came in, he picked up what Trump had built and weaponized it even further. And yes, people were forced to take vaccines as a condition of keeping their job as
Well,
a pilot,
military
as
were
a
and
condition
military were,
of
but
being in the military. And nurses, there were
but
tens of thousands
private
of nurses and
businesses,
doctors that were fired.
and that's been reversed now.
But
And
that
most of
doesn't
those
stop
people
that
have
doesn't stop
won
the
in
fact
court.
that that we were lied to by President Trump and President Biden and their administrations about the safety and efficacy of the
But
COVID
you and I
shot.
got the same lies, and we didn't do it.
Well,
And
through
there
great
were over
distress.
and there
Mo
were over
most people this
500 sheriffs that stood against that,
Right, but
Shannon.
it was about a 30% minority. Most people were so fearful. They had been so propagandized. Again, starting in the Trump administration, then continued by the Biden administration about this virus that
But
they took that shot thinking it was the only way that they were going to get
I
out of
still don't buy
lockdown.
that. I don't buy that because
Well, we witnessed it.
if you're so dumb now that you believe and trust government, that by now, I mean, look at all the lies. Look at Vietnam and look at all the other things that have
Well,
happened
then
over
why
the
do we
years.
trust Trump now? If we shouldn't have trusted him in 2020, why is everyone trusting him
I'm
now?
not saying we should have never trusted you. I'm not saying that. I'm saying government. I'm
Yeah.
saying all of the history of the subterfuge and dishonesty and corruption of government. And we have people still going along with that? Come on.
Well, this is why I think we need to challenge and criticize and oppose this administration and DOGE and Elon. The executive orders, the emergency declarations. I have here a piece about the militarization. And this is from David Leach, the strident conservative. This dropped yesterday. Trump is using the military to secure the border. He believes it's a precursor to
And
martial
Leach is
law.
wrong. Leach
Yeah.
is wrong about that.
Well, we'll go into it. Why don't we get,
Okay,
because
let me
I
tell you
agree with
why.
you. I
You
agree with
have to
you.
know the Constitution.
Here's the thing,
Okay.
Sheriff Mack. I
Okay.
agree with you that that there is no way I trust anyone in government. Democrat, Republican, Trump,
Jefferson
Biden,
warned us not to.
none of them. None of them.
Right.
So
Right.
perplexes me about people on the right is that things that we would criticize Biden and his administration for doing, when we get our guy in the same position, it's as if we go to sleep and we are in defense mode. And we have this knee-jerk reaction to try to defend this president when we shouldn't. We should be holding him accountable. We should be yelling at him when he gets it wrong on the Constitution, or when he overreaches or betrays a promise.
Okay, but
right?
let me explain why Leach is wrong.
Well, why don't we go to break? I'm going to let you do that. And David Leach is actually on the live chat right now, the Strident Conservative. And so we'll look at his piece. I'll read a little bit from it. And then, we talk about that. By the way, thank you to our sponsors. Thank you. I really appreciate you coming on the show with me, Sheriff Mack, to answer some of my questions. Because man, we live in very confusing and difficult times right now. And I know that people are trying to figure out what's going on and protect their families. And sometimes this type of discourse, I think, it's important. So I really appreciate you, Sheriff Mack. I have great respect for you. And when we come back, let's continue this discussion after a commercial break. And we will look at this piece about using the military to secure that border and the potential for martial law. We'll be back in a moment here on the Shannon Joy Show. So here's a little trivia, everyone. What have human beings been using to cook for 5,000 years of human history? Are you stumped? Well, the answer is ceramic. Some of the very first cooking artifacts that have been discovered were created using ceramic. And if you fast forward to 2025, the ceramic cookware that I use every day is from Chef's Foundry. The P600 sizzle set is a regular feature in the Joy kitchen. And the best part is that ceramic, unlike most nonstick Teflon pans, doesn't have any of those nasty chemicals like PFAs, lead, or cadmium. Don't let poison seep into your food and serve up lead to your children. It's time to start cooking like the natives with Chef's Foundry and get that P600 sizzle set for 55% off with a limited time offer for the Joy audience exclusively. Go to www.chefsfoundry.com/joy for this exclusive deal and start sizzling with Chef's Foundry today. Shannon Joy here for PCM and Associates. If we've learned anything over the past 4 years, it's to expect the unexpected. Well, proper asset allocation can minimize the impact of the unexpected. From inflation to tax rates to energy efficiencies, we can never really know what we're going to get. Allocating funds among various categories like growth, income, international, tangible assets, and cash can help investors prepare for anything. PCM and Associates practices asset allocation for a rate of return. Call Don Polano today at 1-800-536-1368. That's 1-800-536-1368 for financial independence with a wealth manager who shares your values. Call Dom today. It is the strangest thing, right? Hydration. Seems simple enough. It's basic hydration, but it is something that I haven't thought about for most of my life. And as a result, I think that I've been borderline dehydrated for most of my adult life. Now, when you're younger, your body might be better able to handle dehydration, but as you age, you notice it more and more. Your body becomes way more susceptible to dehydration, and this can result in a lot of ailments like muscle cramping, bladder problems, fatigue, and also brain fog. So about 1.5 years ago, I started adding daily hydration with 2 packets of Native Path Hydrate every single day. And this became part of my morning routine. And guys, I cannot believe the difference. I can't believe that I wasn't hydrating for most of my life. It is a huge and noticeable difference. In fact, when I don't have my Native Path Hydrate in the morning, I can tell, and it's a tougher day. You need to hydrate, people, and now you can for 45% off with a sick deal from our friends over at Native Path Hydrate. Go to nativepathhydrate.com/joy. That's nativepathhydrate.com/joy to learn all about the benefits of hydration and unlock a 45% off deal that is just for the Joy audience. This is the best price point that I have seen anywhere, and this is a workhorse product. It is the best in the market for just basic hydration. I absolutely love it, and you will too. So go to nativepathhydrate.com/joy today to unlock that deal and get started on daily hydration. Welcome back, everyone, to the Shannon Joy Show. And yes, I have my Native Path Hydrate right now with me. I drink it every single day. It's delicious. I love it. Make sure you unlock, I think it's 45% off for the Native Path Hydrate. Annie, if you wouldn't mind popping that into the Rumble live chat so that people can click right on it and stock up on this amazing discount from our friends over at Native Path. I think the thing with DOGE, where people get confused with it, I think it's two things, and we'll get to the military in a second, Sheriff Mack. There is the front-facing conservative media platformed narrative of Elon as the big DOGE guy going in and uncovering all of this reckless spending and inefficiencies. And he started with a goal of $2 trillion in cuts. It went down to $1 trillion in cuts. Now it's $150 billion in cuts. And we are seeing no corresponding government spending cuts from the Trump-approved budget, which is now past the House of Representatives and is going to make its way to Trump's desk for signature. So what is the point of identifying all of the waste, fraud, and abuse? What is the point of going in and finding it if you're not going to actually cut anything? Where is that money going, right? That's the one aspect of DOGE. And it's generating all these really juicy, lovely headlines for conservatives, and it makes them feel good. The second part of DOGE, though, is Elon and his team of technologists who are going in and stealing our private information. No one in conservative media, except for Conservative Treehouse, in this very good piece that is linked in the show notes. I recommend you read the whole thing, Sheriff Mack. It's excellent. No one in conservative media is talking about the absolute the coup d'etat, as Naomi Wolf describes it, and how powerful the tech bros and the oligarchs are now that they have access to that information and the ability to control that information. So there are two separate things at play here, and I think that's where people get somewhat confused about DOGE. But at the very least, I think it needs to be scrutinized. I mean, since when did the Constitution say you could hand over vast powers to Elon Musk, a trillionaire, government subsidized tech bro, right? I mean, I don't see that in the Constitution.
Well, yeah, Elon Musk isn't mentioned, but either are sheriffs mentioned there. But it has to do with executive power. Can he create a committee to search out corruption and criminal spending? You call it reckless. I call it criminal. It's a lot stronger, needs a lot stronger words there. Can he do that? Yes, he can. And anybody can volunteer and become a part of anybody's campaign. Governors, senators, they all have volunteers that help them. The question is,
but how do you hold them accountable?
Are they taking power that they don't constitutionally have?
Here's a question.
At this point, I don't believe he has, unless he's doing something with everybody's information that the IRS has already been doing to us for years. As a matter of fact, if you have a concealed carry permit, you're already on Interpol and international lists. Okay? Is that against the law? Yes. And it should be addressed. But we are already, this is trying to shut the gate after the horses all got out.
But they're not ending it. They're not getting rid of it.
It should not be happening, but it is. And the IRS works for the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve is a bunch of international corrupt banksters. And so it's all there. I also believe that President Trump is addressing 30 million to 40 million people who are here illegally. 90% of them are enemies of Americans and criminals, and are bringing in the greatest threat to America in our history. No question about it. And it appears to me he's doing a pretty good job addressing that horrible issue. And that needs to be addressed. And these people need to get out of our country and many of them need to go to prison. The dissidents from China, the dissidents from Russia, and the international terrorists that have infiltrated our country is absolutely a disaster, a catastrophe, and all of us, none of us can ignore that. And it is the number one priority for them. My number one priority is to stop abortion, but right now our country must be secure before we can address anything. And so I agree with what he's trying to do there. And sheriffs have got to be involved in that process. And if it's going to be fair and honest and safe, then sheriffs have got to be involved in that process.
Isn't it
One other
important
thing, what
that
I
that
said, I want to make sure this is clear.
sure.
I don't want to become an enemy to Leach. But he, first, let's read Article 2, Section 4, or no, Section 3 of the United States Constitution, talking about the power of the president. He shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed and shall commission all the officers of the United States. So
So here's the
he's the ultimate, wait. He's the ultimate enforcer of the law. Okay, that's
Sheriff
his
Mack.
job.
I agree.
Next, Article 4, Section 4 of the United States Constitution. What does that say? Okay, let's look that one up really quick, shall we? Okay. Article 4, Section 4. Got it right here. Am I in Article 4, Section 4? Oh,
Take your
Article
time.
4.
Take your time.
Oh, yeah, here it is. The United States shall guarantee to every state in the Union a Republican form of government. Most people in this country are brainwashed and believe that we are a democracy. And shall protect each of them against invasion. And so our borders have, by traitors in our own country and in the last administration, traitors to America, and all of these people should be investigated for treason, and they're not. Sheriff Mark Lamb actually did an investigation and turned it over to his county attorney that got nothing. An investigation on Alejandro Mayorkas for criminal activity and treason. Nothing ever happened to it. The corruption just keeps protecting these people. And that's why we need stronger enforcement and stronger involvement by we the people.
Okay.
The
So
border. The president has the authority to enforce the law at the border, and he can call out the military to be at the border
this
because
is the
it's
question.
protecting our country from invasion and infiltration by our enemies.
Okay.
Now,
Two things.
through the streets of America in Detroit and in Los Angeles, no, the military cannot be used. But at the border, they most certainly can.
Okay. So I hear your point there, and your rationale. A couple of things, and I'm going to get to David's piece, and we can go through, his interpretation of this. I would say first and foremost, the area that the president is the enforcer of the law. This is where people like Daniel Horowitz make a really great point. We already have the laws on the books that could necessarily, very legally and in an orderly fashion, through beginning to wean down the benefits and all of the federal handouts that illegal immigrants are getting from our federal government. There are about 100 different ways that Trump could begin the process of encouraging people to go back to their home countries voluntarily. If they turned off the money spigot, they would go back.
He has done that.
We haven't seen that yet. We haven't seen
we
that.
have.
Now, in addition to that,
we have
the laws that we need in order to do this. What we're looking at is something extraordinary. So let's go to, I gave you a moment here. Let's go to David's piece here and give him, and I'm going to go through this. It's going to take a minute, guys, but I want to lay out what his position here is. Over the weekend, Donald Trump announced that he would use the military to control federal land on the southern border ahead of making a decision on whether or not he will invoke the Insurrection Act of 1807, a move that Leach says will inevitably lead to a declaration of martial law. Now, remember, everything that
Speculation.
Republicans build, Democrats that then will wield. So the infrastructure that is built by Republicans during their administrations are always used by subsequent Democrat institutions or administrations to further, in my opinion, destroy our Constitution and our natural rights. But he goes on to say, within 90 days of this proclamation, all right, and this is the date of the proclamation, or this is the text of the proclamation. Within 90 days of the date of this proclamation, the Secretary of Defense and the Secretary of Homeland Security shall submit a joint report to the President about the conditions at the southern border of the United States and any recommendations regarding additional actions that may be necessary to complete operational control of the southern border, including whether to invoke the Insurrection Act of 1807. Now, while waiting for the report that will undoubtedly come down in favor of invoking the Insurrection Act, as David Leach points out here, that's his opinion, Trump sent out this memo this past weekend announcing that he will give the military control of federal land along the border. This, says David Leach, is where the deception comes in, because the federal land that they will control, is a 60-foot wide strip of land known as the Roosevelt Reservation, which exists on the American side of the border in California, Arizona, and Texas. In other words, according to Leach, Trump is essentially making this strip of land a military base, and he supports that with a piece linked to Defense One. The memo directs the Interior Department to allow the Defense Department to have jurisdiction over portions of federal land known as the Roosevelt Reservation, excluding any Native American reservations. Leach writes, by creating a military buffer zone that stretches across the entire U.S.-Mexico border in Arizona, California, and New Mexico, it means any migrant crossing into the U.S. would be trespassing on a military base, therefore allowing active duty troops to hold them until U.S. Border Control agents arrive. National and military experts have raised concern, writes Leach, that giving control of the land over to the military could violate the Posse Comitatus Act in 1878 that generally prohibits the military from being used in domestic law enforcement. So you're saying, so at the border, yes, there is an appropriate place for the
allowed at the
military.
border.
In the
It is proper,
interior, it is
but
not.
they cannot go.
Well,
Correct.
Leach is saying that
Correct.
this is absolutely the interior of the U.S.
No,
border.
no.
And what he says here is that this is going to be the camel's nose under the tent. Once they establish this, then they can make the determination that any area in the interior of the United States of America could be open to this type of military martial law. He goes on to say this: the Friday memo instructs its phased implementation within 45 days, and said that it could be expanded over time. The
But you
memo
see,
directed.
but so much of that is speculation on his part. I mean, martial law has not been declared in the United States for a long time. It's very rarely used. Um, Trump did
I would
not use it
challenge
the
you.
first
I would
time.
challenge you on that.
Uh,
Because also linked in the show notes of the Shannon Joy Show is the COVID dossier, which was prepared by Sasha Latipova, researcher Sasha Latipova and Debbie Lerman of the Brownstone Institute. And this lays out that it was a military operation, that COVID,
well, martial law was not even declared
it,
during COVID.
it wasn't,
No, it wasn't.
martial law wasn't declared, but the rollout of the lockdowns was a military operation. And I encourage
Where
you to
did you
read some
see
pieces.
military trying to close businesses down or schools? That is
Well,
absolutely not true.
the DOD was running the entire show. So they were telling Trump what to say. They were telling Fauci what to say. They were telling the agencies what types of protocols to use and
The
countermeasures. And
question
then
is,
they
did
were
they have
implementing.
military going through our streets, and were they closing schools and businesses down?
So
No,
I would
they were
agree.
not.
It didn't get to the extent of martial law. However, it was a
Well, then
military
it wasn't
operation.
martial law.
So the question here, though, is if this is a living and breathing document, so to speak, that can be expanded, which is included in the memo, and we've established that that strip of land is not the border, it is the interior of the country, as laid out by David Leach, then could this be used? Could this be used and expanded if they have some type of new emergency declaration? Like, That is the concern here.
Well, we have a lot more concerns than that, and just speculating about whether or not martial law is going to happen at the border. The border needs to be secure, and the
But it's
bleeding
not
at
the
the
border,
border has got to
it's the
stop.
interior. So could this lead to militarizing areas with high immigration populations and
It's
going door to door and ripping people
that's
out of their
total
homes?
speculation, but for both of us. I
Well,
mean,
it looks as if they are opening the door. They're trying to establish that.
well, first, can the military be at the border? Yes. Well, how wide is the border? Is it just a mile one side and mile the other? And if the dissidents from China and Russia are doing that, and the international terrorists are there, it's going to take a pretty substantial amount of work to stop it,
Okay, there's
and
what
then to
great question
and,
for you
and
then.
then to locate those people within the country.
Okay,
These
and
people
here's
are
the
here
question.
to kill us.
Why wouldn't Trump do it the constitutional way and put the military at the border? Why are they moving it into the interior? What is the point of that? They don't need to. You're
Well,
right.
how
Right?
far from the
If
border? You said 60 miles
it's
from the
60
border.
miles in the interior, I
60
believe.
miles. That's pretty close to the border. I
Or
would
not
give
60
them.
miles.
I would have to give them. Anybody would have to give them that if that's where the problem is occurring at the border or pursuant to the border. I don't think that's. I don't think
See,
that's
I
a
think the
stretch.
reason they're moving it into the interior is to establish a precedent and try to get away with it. And I think if we let them
And
get
that's
away with it,
speculation as well.
it is, but
I don't. Well, first of all, I don't want them. I don't want them to exaggerate it at all. But we don't need to build something up that we really are speculating about.
well, no,
And when there's so many other things that we've
vigilant.
got to focus on.
Hey, listen, if Biden did this, do you think that Steve Bannon would be like, "Oh, let's just give him the benefit of the doubt and trust him"? I mean,
Uh,
come on.
no,
Now,
probably not.
he goes
No,
on to
probably
say,
not.
well, that's what I'm saying. Like, let's take the same thing that we would do with Biden and apply it to Trump. Because the only thing we're doing with Trump is saying, well, we trust him, right? Like that we're going to let him do this. We're not going to say anything about it. We're not going to critique it or criticize it because
Mhm.
we don't trust Biden, but we do trust Trump. But I don't know why we do that. I don't think we should. Let me go on a little bit. Um, it talks about phased implementation over 45 days, says it could be expanded over time. The memo is directed at the secretaries of the Department of Defense, Interior, Agriculture, and Homeland Security. He says, of course, this will be expanded over time. And he goes on to say the problems. To begin with, there's likely a violation of the Posse Comitatus Act that will require Trump to have something more powerful at his disposal to achieve his objectives, such as the Insurrection Act.
Mm.
So he's wondering then if he could declare the Insurrection Act of 1807, it's federal law. This empowers the president to deploy the U.S. military and National Guard to suppress insurrections or domestic violence. And as we saw on January 6th, the criteria concerning what constitutes an insurrection or domestic violence is open to interpretation. He goes on by invoking the Insurrection Act, but invoking the Insurrection Act won't be the end of Trump's use of the military as a national police force because he would be restricted to local areas such as the southern border. In order to deal with the millions of immigrants already in the country, including legal immigrants, he would need to be able to use the military in all 50 states. That is when Trump would need to expand again by declaring martial law. And when he does, his use of military domestically will apply to the whole nation. And he has talked about declaring martial law. We've heard that rhetoric. I think that we should be concerned with it personally.
I'm concerned about all of that, but I'm also concerned now about all the terrorists that are in our country, and I'm also concerned about if we can't trust anybody that's been president, who's going to be the next one, and who do we really have in our country that we would want to be president that we could really follow?
No one. Local, local, local. I agree with you. I don't trust Trump.
So,
I don't know why we
so
trust Trump. I don't know why people trust him.
yeah, and Jefferson warned us that we were never to just completely trust government, and
Mhm.
that has been the problem that we have. And we do have a lot of dumbed down people in our country that just go along and just, oh, you tell me to get vaxxed, okay, I'll get vaxxed. And my wife and I, as soon as that vax came out, we said, no way, hell no. But the thing of it is, I'm still very concerned about the enemies that we have invited into our country through this past administration. And I find that a much bigger concern because I don't have to speculate about that. These people are here. The attacks that are going to go on against our grid uh, and, and, and food supply and water supply, uh, those might be a little bit speculative, but I don't think so. I think the evidence is very clear. These people that are here are going after us. Uh, and I can see that. I saw what happened in Colorado when they took over an entire apartment complex and more than one. And I saw the murders and I've seen the rapes and we only detect in law enforcement about 12% of all crime. It's all worse. Corruption in government is worse than we know, and the crime across our country is worse, and the crime from illegal immigration is 10 times worse than we know. And we've got to focus our energy on those issues.
I have to say though, I'm really those things sound very scary, and they are very scary. 9/11 was very scary. It was awful. I was,
Mm-hmm.
a young woman when 9/11 happened.
Yep.
Absolutely tragic. But I feel as if we are in a moment in U.S. history where the fear is weaponized, and it is exaggerated, and then it is used to pass things like the Patriot Act and establish the NSA and
Which
establish
the
the secret
Republican
FISA
Party
courts.
did. Republicans
That's my
passed the Patriot Act.
point. Like
Yeah.
Bush did that. I mean,
Yeah.
this is why I say like we are the most vulnerable when our own people are in political office. Because the people who would normally stand up, people who read the Constitution, understand separation of powers, Christians and conservatives and constitutionalists, those are the people who would normally stand up. But when it's our guy, they stand down because they trusted Bush, because Bush
Uh,
was a born again Christian, because Bush really cared about the country. I remember all of that propaganda.
oh
I do. I
yeah.
remember all of it.
Oh yeah.
Because we had to keep America safe
He,
because of the
he was a
scary
born again
terrorists.
Christian who and his wife and he both supported abortion.
But so does Trump. Trump supports abortion too. He said it openly.
Yeah.
So I don't. I mean, he's been very clear that he supports abortion and a woman's right to choose. So I guess I'm just trying to. I love this country, and I know you love this country.
Yes.
And I think that we share our concern, you for your grandchildren, obviously, and your children, me for my own children. Um, it would be devastating if through all of this, from 9/11 on to COVID lockdowns, through the Biden administration that was a nightmare with the coercion and the requirements for the shots, and now moving into a second Trump administration. If we lose our Constitution, if we don't claim back the rule of law and do
Yes.
these things in the right way, the constitutional way,
Yes.
right, from the executive office, then we're not going to have a free country to hand to our kids. And I'm very
Well,
concerned that
well,
that's happening.
freedom and the IRS cannot coexist. And
But they're
I've
not
said
getting rid
that
of the IRS.
I've said that all my life.
Yeah,
And both Democrats and Republicans support the bullying and cruelty of the IRS.
I agree. I agree. I just am looking out at this. I'm what gives me consternation is the fact that so many of my colleagues in conservative media support and cheer this type of thing when it is a Republican president, and they cover
No.
for the Republican president rather than being consistent in criticizing it.
George W. and Barack Obama were the same president.
I would say Trump and Biden are the same president. I would say the exact same thing from my perspective. Listen, I'm just a girl. I'm just observing, reading the bills, right? I mean, 12 years. And when you look at the budget, if you look at the Biden era budget next to the Trump budget, they're exactly the same. Actually, Trump's are worse. He's increasing the debt and deficit and spending, and also handing a lot of powers over to private entities and private corporations, which
I, yeah.
oversight goes out the window with that.
Which
So
I will say this, I trust Elon Musk 10 times more than anybody who works for Social Security, IRS, FBI, DEA, on and on and on. FDA.
I mean, there's a lot on Elon Musk. He's
Yeah.
an interesting guy. I mean,
Yeah.
he has, I think, 13 children with 4 different mothers. and
Yeah.
he artificially inseminates them. He's also a transhumanist. Do you know
So
about his company Neuralink?
before we close, do we have any good news for everybody?
Well, you know, I'm the black pill girl. Like I was telling everyone the story about how, like, I'm just like this. Musk. Do a deep dive on Musk. He is freaky, weird, weirdo, weird, transhumanist, brain chips. I mean, you might want to do like take another look at him. What is the good news? There is so much good news, and you'll share
My
this
anniversary.
your anniversary with your beautiful wife. And listen, I believe that more and more, I'm an independent. I'm not a Republican or Democrat. So I hammer both administrations. I don't care if you're an R or a D, I'm going to go after you from a constitutional perspective.
Right.
The more people I'm talking to more and more people who are independent and more people who are examining the Constitution because they're so fed up with both political parties. And I'm also seeing there's so much action at the state
We need
level
to
on
follow the admonition of George Washington and get rid of the party system.
let's go. Let's
Yeah.
go. The factions. I agree with you 100%. And I mean, anything I present to my audience all the time, all of the great things happening at the local level, at the state
Yes.
level, the states
Yes.
regaining and seizing back their power that is defined and granted by the Constitution of the United States of America. So there is so much great resistance happening out there. It's just not happening in DC. That's just my perspective of it. And believe me, I want to find good things. I would love to report on something that I thought was good coming from this administration, but I just haven't seen it yet. And that's just my perspective. But I do really appreciate your perspective, and appreciate everything that you've done to educate people about the Constitution and the role of the sheriff. And I think we're going to go into some interesting times. So I hope that we can stick together and that you'll join me again for some of these. I mean, I thought this was a fun conversation personally.
I would stand with you anywhere.
Oh, same. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Same. Well, you got a couple minutes to close us out, Sheriff Mack. How can people support you and your organization as we close out
Okay.
the show?
Well, you could ask yourself a question. How much food do you have in your home if everything's shut down?
Mm,
Most people have three days of food and about a day of water.
wow.
And so, folks, you've got to look at that. You've got to have an independent source for water
Hmm.
and an independent source for food. We have Numana Foods on our website. Go
Okay.
to cspoa.org and check those out. They're organic foods, excellent food. I use them. I also keep canned goods in my pantry.
Awesome.
I have enough right now for all of my family for at least 6 months, maybe a
Wow.
year.
Wow.
And then how do you do water? And don't say, "Oh, good, I have a swimming pool."
Not
Those
going to
won't
work.
last, and they won't stay clean. And
Hmm.
so you've got to have a place in your house where you store water.
Okay.
Okay. Uh, and so everybody join the CSPOA, join the Constitutional Sheriff Movement, cspoa.org, become a member, make a donation, and stand with us in this holy cause of liberty. We
Oh,
can only take
absolutely.
America back county by county.
Hmm. And that's where we need to go next is that county by county. I
Yeah.
think that the politics always gets diverted to whoever the most popular, biggest politician is, right?
Yep.
And when we should be talking about preparing food, water, county level, county sheriffs, good people in local government, finding our groups and our organizations. And you and I stand shoulder to shoulder on that. I cannot wait to have you back on the Shannon Joy Show again. That is
Anytime you want.
absolutely,
Absolutely.
cspoa.org, cspoa.org. Big thanks to Sheriff Richard Mack. Thank you guys for being with us today on the Shannon Joy Show. We'll see you tomorrow right here at 12 p.m. Eastern Time to do it all again on the Shannon Joy Show.